Hello, everyone. Welcome back to St. Louis Teens. We are here today with Wilfried Zibell, who is a joint concentrator in comparative literature and Near Eastern languages and civilizations at Harvard. He's from Noorvik, Alaska, and will be studying imperialism and displacement at Oxford. Wilfried, you're recently named the Rhodes Scholar of 2021. Congratulations, and thank you for your phenomenal work with literary and economic analysis and the solutions they offer to our current world.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Wilfried, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what inspired you to study literature and civilizations?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm from Noorvik, Alaska, which is a tiny village in the far northwestern Arctic. And, growing up, I had to hunt and fish a lot for food because we're so far out and it's sort of still a very traditional economy. And the native language, Inupiaq, is very much a part of everyday life. Um, Folks around my age and younger aren't fluent anymore. Actually, really, people under 40 aren't fluent too much anymore. But it's still interwoven into day-to-day vocabulary. And so when I got to Harvard and I found out that I could kind of create my own curriculum in the comparative literature department, I jumped on the chance to study the language in a literary sense. And then, sort of the more and more I studied and understood, I realized that we can't really understand why languages are dying, are really being killed until we understand the economic reasons, the colonial reasons behind them.
And every year, only 32 students nationally are selected as a prestigious Rhodes Scholar to spend a fully paid graduate study in Oxford, London. Can you tell us your keys to success and what is one of the most important experiences in college that helped you the most?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of success, I think that I really can't take credit for my own success too much. Growing up in the village, it was very much a communal effort, and I think everyone who made me who I am today has equal share in everything I've accomplished so far. Um, that being said, I think finding something you're passionate about, finding a way you can give back to your community and to similarly the people who made you who you are, is the most important thing in finding success. And it oftentimes won't, you know, sometimes not just chasing a check, not just trying to make as much money as possible, will throw up a barrier between you and sort of standard definitions of success. But I think the only success that's worth having is success that lets you lift other people up with you.
And Wilfred, at Oxford, you plan to move from a literary analysis to an economic analysis, and you mention attempting to understand how economic development can be both oppressive and liberatory. Can you help us understand this further?
Yeah, definitely. So this is something that's really important in Alaska, of course. Basically, our economy is entirely oil-based, but with only very little exception, that money doesn't go to Alaskans. It doesn't go to indigenous people. It doesn't go to the most needy. All of that development, some of it benefits the communities it's in very unevenly. But for the most part, it goes to people who already have a lot. And of course, in St. Louis, it's no different, right? Like the economic disparity in St. Louis is similarly remarkable. Uh, and I think that oftentimes in places like home, we get a lot of talk about economic development sort of as this end all be all solution. And I think it's very important to understand that any economic development is being done by somebody because of something. And it's very rarely because they want to help you. Usually it's because they want to make money off of you. And I want to find a way we can we can create economic development for the people, for a sustainable, both socially and ecologically future. And I think that, um, we can't keep relying on Monsanto and BP and hoping that they'll rescue us, when really they're the ones who benefit from us being in the situation.
And Wilfried, you're passionate about helping support the culture of Native communities and communities in the world displaced by colonialism. And based on your work so far, what are some of the hurdles Native communities and those displaced by colonialism face, and how can we help overcome them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sort of similarly, um, we find ourselves in an economic position, um, where, in the United States, I mean, the status quo very much depends on not having native sovereignty, not having resource rights, um, and similarly not having an equitable treatment for undocumented workers, for Black workers and workers of color and refugees. And all of this sort of props up the economic status quo. And I think the most important things we can do moving forward are organizing, creating movements that support the rights of all of these groups, on a very fundamental level. The most fundamental human rights are the right to life, and this sort of thing is denied oftentimes to all of these communities, whether it's police violence, whether it's no drinking water, whether it's mental health, um, whether it's, I mean, for example, food at home is ridiculously expensive. Part of why we have to hunt for food is, you want a frozen pizza, it can be up to $50, DiGiorno's. Um, and so I think that the most important step forward is understanding that it's not, I'm not Native, and it's not, that I want to help Native people as this sort of outside myself thing, but understanding that this is really one fight, one project, whether whatever group you belong to, whatever your position is, when we're fighting for equal rights, wherever we are, whoever we are, whatever the fight is, it's one fight. And I think that's the bedrock of my work and my beliefs.
And I think that message is so important on many levels. And the main is that it's unifying to everyone and sort of everyone coming together. I do want to switch over now to COVID-19 and the pandemic. And having successfully fought COVID-19 yourself and having worked with COVID-19 outreach with your tribal association this summer, what are some of the challenges different communities are facing because of COVID, and how can we help each other during these difficult times?
Yeah, definitely. So it wasn't my tribal association. The website has it listed wrong. It's my village's tribal association that I worked with. And when I had COVID pretty severely myself. Harvard sent us all home in the spring, and on my way back home, I believe I contracted it, and I made the decision not to go back to the village, but to stay in Fairbanks, one of the cities in Alaska where I could live by myself and there was medical resources. But part of the reason I made that decision was, in the village, there are not medical resources. There are almost none. Um, we have a clinic and we have sort of a hospital nearby, but um, it's sort of running on bootstrings. It's very much not capable of holding a massive community spread, and that's the case all throughout rural Alaska, um, which we're seeing right now. And luckily, we kind of had a delayed start to the pandemic in the villages because we're so remote, we're so isolated. But now that it's there, a lot of problems are, we have very dense housing, a lot of people under one roof, very old, very old average age in the villages, um, and just no resources either on the individual level. Like, we're very much not a rich region, and also on the structural level, we just don't have a lot of resources to deal with it. Uh, and what that ends up meaning is the the responsibility to handle the pandemic um, is not only on the individual but on the state and the government, And we've just seen a massive abdication of that responsibility. They've basically, chosen to let people die. And that's really the fundamental issue, I think, is we've got all of these problems interlinking that make us especially vulnerable. But the core problem is that we, again, live in an economic system that is just, it's not profitable to save lives.
And Wilfred, with your experience with youth in Native communities, what is one of the biggest strengths of today's youth that one can leverage to become leaders and to make a difference in our world?
Mm-hmm. I think, you know, when that's a good question. Um, I think the biggest strength and the biggest is also the biggest hurdle for youth right now, because we find ourselves being the generation that can see what's coming. We are going to be the ones who inherit all of these problems right now, and are inheriting all of these problems right now. And I that is that's a big responsibility. That's a lot to carry. And we see it divides in youth along racial and class lines, because not everyone is inheriting that future equally. Some people are inheriting it in more of a estate tax kind of way, and other people are inheriting the burden. And I think the most important benefit of youth right now is the knowledge that the world we build currently is the world we are going to live in. The world we fight for and create is the one we are going to get a chance to inhabit. While people across various different ages are all involved in the fight, the youth of today have the unique benefit of not only seeing the promised land, but having a hope to live there as well.
And finally, Wilfred, what is your advice for teens aspiring to become scholars and leaders like yourself?
Um, I think the most important advice is actually kind of counterintuitively, uh, don't let your aspiration be to become a scholar. Don't let your aspiration be to become a leader. Find something you are passionate about. Find people you are passionate about helping. And if scholarship, if academia is the best route you see to doing that, pursue it with everything you have. If whatever route you see is most helpful for people you want to help, pursue that with everything you've got, like your life depends on it, because our lives do depend on it. And more often than not, that kind of passion, that inner drive is going to carry you farther than sort of just wanting to be involved in academia for academics' sake. Of course, because that passion is so much more personal, there's a lot more to lose as well. It's a much bigger risk you're taking, but it's the only way to make it worthwhile. To make anything worthwhile is to care about it and to help others.
Wilfred, thank you so much for your phenomenal service, and thank you so much for your time today and answering all of our questions.
Yeah, thank you for having me.